The Mongol invasions of Japan, which took place in 1274 and 1281, were major military efforts undertaken by Kublai Khan to conquer the Japanese archipelago after the submission of Goryeo to vassaldom, ultimately a failure. The invasion attempts are of macro-historical importance because they set a limit on Mongol expansion and rank as nation-defining events in the history of Japan. The Mongol invasions are considered a precursor to early modern warfare. One of the most notable technological innovations during the war was the use of explosive hand-thrown bombs. The invasions are referred to in many works of fiction, and are the earliest events for which the word kamikaze is widely used, originating in reference to the two typhoons faced by the Mongol fleets. Background: after a series of Mongol invasions of Korea between 1231 and 1259, Goryeo signed a treaty in favor of the Mongols and became a vassal state. Kublai was declared Khagan of the Mongol Empire in 1260 and established his capital at Khanbalik in 1264. Japan at the time was ruled by the Shikana shogunate regents of the Hojo clan, who had intermarried with and wrested control from Minamoto no Yorii, shogun of the Kamakura shogunate. After his death in 1203, the inner circle of the Hojo clan had become so preeminent that they no longer consulted the council of the shogunate, the imperial court of Kyoto, or the Gokin and vassals, and made the decisions at private meetings in the residences. The Mongols also made attempts to subjugate the native peoples of Sakhalin, the Ainus organic peoples, from 1260 to 1308. Contact. In 1266, Kublai Khan dispatched emissaries to Japan with a letter saying, "Cherished from mandate of heaven, the great Mongol emperor sends this letter to the king of Japan. The sovereigns of small countries, sharing borders with each other, have for a long time been concerned to communicate with each other and become friendly, especially since my ancestor governed at heaven's command. Innumerable countries from afar disputed o'er power and slighted o'er virtue. Goryeo rendered thanks for my ceasefire and for restoring the land and people when I ascended the throne. Our relation is feudatory like a father and son. We think you already know this. Goryeo is my eastern tributary. Japan was allied with Goryeo and sometimes with China since the founding of your country. However, Japan has never dispatched ambassadors since my ascending the throne. We are afraid that the kingdom is yet to know this. Hence we dispatched a mission with our letter particularly expressing our wishes. Enter into friendly relations with each other from now on. We think all countries belong to one family. How are we in the right, unless we comprehend this? Nobody would wish to resort to arms." Kublai essentially demanded that Japan become a vassal and send tribute under a threat of conflict. However, the emissaries returned empty-handed. A second set of emissaries were sent in 1268, returning empty-handed like the first. Both sets of emissaries met with the Shinsei Bugyo, or defense commissioner for the West, who passed on the message to Shikan Hojo Tokimune, Japan's ruler in Kamakura, and the Emperor of Japan in Kyoto. After discussing the letters with his inner circle, there was much debate, but the Shikan had his mind made up. He had the emissaries sent back with no answer. The Mongols continued to send demands, some through Korean emissaries and some through Mongol ambassadors on March 7, 1269, September 17, 1269, September 1271, and May 1272. However, each time, the bearers were not permitted to land in Kyushu. The imperial court suggested compromise, but really had little effect in the matter, due to political marginalization after the Jokyu War. The uncompromising shogunate ordered all those who held fiefs in Kyushu the area closest to the Korean peninsula and thus most likely to be attacked. To return to the lands, and forces in Kyushu moved west, further securing the most likely landing points. After acknowledging its importance, the imperial court led great prayer services, and much government business was put off to deal with this crisis. First invasion preparations. The Khan was willing to go to war as early as 1268 after having been rebuffed twice, but found that his empire did not have the resources to provide him with a sufficient navy at the time. With Mongol entry into the Korean court by marriage of the Korean crown prince to Kublai Khan's daughter, a mass construction of ships began on Korea's southeastern shores, while the Mongols continued to demand Japan's surrender. Kublai Khan founded the Yuan dynasty in 1271. In 1272, King Chungyeol offered counsel to Kublai Khan. According to Goryeo, Japan is yet to know the world is hallowed. So dispatch emissaries and convey our military power to Japan. Battleships and military rations are well prepared. If you appoint me, I encourage you to the extent of my power. According to the history of Yuan, King of Goryeo asked Kublai Khan for conquering Japan. I am building 150 ships and encourage your conquest of Japan. First invasion. In 1274, the Yuan fleet set out with an estimated 15,000 Mongol and Chinese soldiers and 8,000 Korean soldiers in 300 large vessels and 400 to 500 smaller crafts. Although figures vary considerably depending on the source, they landed on Komoda-Hama Beach on Tsushima Island on October 5, 1274. Sasukekuni, governor of Tsushima, led a cavalry unit of 80 to defend the island, but he and his outnumbered unit were killed in the engagement. The Mongols and Koreans subsequently invaded Diki. Terano Takokage, the governor of Diki, fought the invaders with about 100 of his cavalrymen, but he killed himself after his unit was defeated. The Mongol forces landed on November 19 in Hakata Bay, a short distance from Dazaifu, the ancient administrative capital of Kyushu. The following day brought the Battle of Bunei, also known as the First Battle of Hakata Bay. The Japanese were inexperienced in managing such a large force, and the Mongols made significant initial progress. It had been approximately 50 years since the last major combat event in Japan, leaving not a single Japanese general with adequate experience in moving large bodies of troops. In addition, the style of warfare that was customary within feudal Japan involved single combat, even on large battlefields. The Mongols possessed foreign weapons which included superior long-range armaments, and easily had the upper hand in open-land combat. The Japanese force at Hakata Bay needed time to await the arrival of reinforcements, with which they would be able to overwhelm the Mongol invaders. Around nightfall, a typhoon caused the Mongol ship captains to suggest that the land force embark in order to avoid the risk of being marooned on Japanese soil. By daybreak, only a few ships had not set out to sea. Those that had were destroyed by the storm. Some accounts offer casualty reports that suggest 200 Mongol ships were lost. However, small Japanese boats were much more swift and maneuverable than Mongol ships, and the Japanese were able to board the remaining ships of the crippled Mongol army. The samurai approached and boarded the ships under cover of darkness and fell on the invaders ferociously. In the small confines of the ships, during the pre-dawn darkness, the Mongols were unable to bring the bows to bear effectively. However, the long, thin Japanese swords got stuck and snapped off in the thick, boiled leather armor of the Mongols, causing blacksmiths to re-evaluate the swords, which led to the invention and spread of the now famous katana in the 13th and 14th century. The katana was made shorter and thicker. A story widely known in Japan is that back in Kamakura, Tokimune was overcome with fear when the invasion finally came, and wanting to overcome his cowardice, he asked Magakusagen, his Zen master also known as Buko, for advice. Buko replied he had to sit in meditation to find the source of his cowardice in himself. Tokimune went to Buko and said, "Finally there is the greatest happening of my life." Buko asked, "How do you plan to face it?" Tokimune screamed, "Katsu," as if he wanted to scare all the enemies in front of him. Buko responded with satisfaction, "It is true that the son of a lion roars as a lion." Since that time, Tokimune was instrumental in spreading Zen and Bushido in Japan among the samurai. Main battles of Battle of Bune, Battle of Tsushima Island, Mongolian victory on October 5. About 1,000 soldiers of Mongolian army landed at Komoda Beach. Sukekuni Soushou Godai of Tsushima Island was killed in action. The Mongolians slaughtered many dwellers of Tsushima Island. Battle of Iki Island, Mongolian victory on October 14. Tera no Kajitaka Shugodai of Iki led about 100 soldiers. They were defeated by the Mongolian army and he committed suicide in Hidzume Castle. About 1,000 Japanese soldiers were killed there. Battle of Hirato Island, Taka Island and Nokono Island, Mongolian victory. On October 16 to 17, the Mongolian army attacked the base of the Sashi clan. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers and Hosashi Sashi, Tomaru Sashi and Izumu Sashi were killed. Battle of Akasaka, Japanese victory. The Mongolian army landed on Suwara district and encamped at Akasaka. On seeing this situation, Takeru Sakikuchi surprised the Mongolian army. The Mongolians escaped to Sohara after losing about 100 soldiers. Battle of Torikaigata, Japanese victory. Thousands of Mongolian soldiers were massed in Torikaigata. Suinaga Takezaki, one of the Japanese commanders, attacked the Mongolian army and fought them. Soon, reinforcements led by Mishiyasu Shiraisi arrived and defeated the Mongolians soundly. The Mongolian casualties of this battle were about 3,500. Withdrawal of Mongolian army. Due to the defeat in Battle of Torikaigata, the Mongolian army was exhausted and withdrew to the ships. On seeing this situation, the Japanese army engaged in night attacks and killed many soldiers. Finally, Hongdagu decided to withdraw to the Yuan-held continent. In the midst of withdrawal, they met a typhoon. Most of the ships sank and many soldiers drowned. Developments leading to the second invasion. Starting in 1275, the shogunate increased efforts to defend against the second invasion, which they thought was sure to come. In addition to better organizing the samurai of Kyushu, they ordered the construction of forts and a large stone wall, and other defensive structures at many potential landing points, including Hakata Bay, where a 2-meter-high wall was constructed in 1276. Religious services increased and the Hakozaki shrine, having been destroyed by the Yuan forces, was rebuilt. A coastal watch was instituted and rewards were given to some 120 valiant samurai. There was even a plan for a raid on Goryeo to be carried out by Shoni Tsunsuke, a general from Kyushu, though this was never executed. After the failed invasion, Kublai Khan was tired of being ignored and not being allowed to land. so 5 Yuan emissaries were dispatched in September 1275 and sent to Kyushu, refusing to leave without a reply. Tokimune responded by having them sent to Kamakura and then beheading them. The graves of those 5 executed Yuan emissaries exist to this day in Kamakura at Tatsunokuchi. Then again on July 29, 1279, 5 more Yuan emissaries were sent in the same manner, and again beheaded, this time in Hakata. Expecting another invasion, on February 21, 1280, the imperial court ordered all temples and shrines to pray for victory over the Yuan. Second invasion. In the spring of 1281, the Mongols sent 2 separate forces. An impressive force of 900 ships containing 40,000 Yuan troops set out from Masan, Korea, while an even larger force of 100,000 sailed from southern China in 3,500 ships. The Mongols' plan called for an overwhelming coordinated attack by the combined imperial Yuan fleets. The Chinese fleet of the Yuan was delayed by difficulties in provisioning and manning the large number of ships they had. The Mongol fleet set sail, suffered heavy losses at Tsushima, and turned back. In the summer, the fleet took Ikishima and moved on to Kyushu, landing at several different locations. In a number of individual skirmishes, known collectively as the Koen Campaign of the Second Battle of Hakata Bay, the Mongol forces were driven back to the ships. The Japanese army was heavily outnumbered, but had fortified the coastal line, and was easily able to repulse the auxiliaries that were launched against it. Beginning August 15, the now famous kamikaze, a massive typhoon, assaulted the shores of Kyushu for 2 days straight, and destroyed much of the Mongol fleet. Furthermore, it is now believed that the destruction of the Mongol fleet was greatly facilitated by an additional factor. Most of the invasion force was composed of hastily acquired flat-bottom Chinese riverboats and ships built in Goryeo and all of a similar type. According to Goryeo's, Southern Song-type ships were too costly and their construction was too slow, so the traditional types were constructed instead. Such ships were difficult to use on high seas, let alone during a massive typhoon. Main battles of the Koen Campaign. Battle of Tsushima Island, Japanese victory on May 21. The Mongolian army landed on Tsushima Island and invaded. They met fierce resistance there and later withdrew. Battle of Shikano Island, Japanese victory on the morning of June 8. The Japanese army divided the force into 2 and attacked along Umi no Nakamichi. The Japanese army lost 300 soldiers but defeated Hongdagu, who nearly died in this battle, and Zhang Cheng. On June 9, Zhang Cheng solidified the defense of his army, but the Mongolian army was again defeated by the fierce Japanese attacks. After this defeat, the Mongolian army escaped to Iki Island. Battle of Iki Island, Japanese victory on June 29. The Japanese army of approximately 10,000, led by the Matsura clan, Usurgi clan and Takagi clan, began an all-out attack on Iki Island. On July 2, Hyakyo Usurgi landed on Setura Beach and defeated the Mongolian army. As a result, the Mongolian army decided to abandon Iki Island and withdrew to Hirato Island. Battle of Mikuria, annihilation of Mongolian navy. On July 5, Suinaga Taisaki attacked and annihilated the Mongolian navy. After this battle, most of the commanders of the Mongolian army escaped to their own country. Battle of Taka Island, annihilation of Mongolian army. On July 7, there were about 100,000 soldiers of the Mongol army without commanders. Upon realizing this situation, the Japanese army attacked Kurichika-do Guard, Kortuto Guard, Sukeka-do Fujiwara and Nagahisa Shimizu defeated 100,000 soldiers. The Japanese took 20,000 to 30,000 prisoners in this battle. At the completion of this battle, Japan's victory was confirmed. Military significance. From a military perspective, the failed invasions of Kublai Khan were the first of only 3 instances when the samurai fought foreign troops rather than amongst themselves, the others being Japanese invasions of Korea and the Japanese invasion of Ryukyu. It is also the first time samurai clans fought for the sake of Japan itself instead of for more narrowly defined clan interests. The invasions also exposed the Japanese to an alien fighting style which, lacking the single combat that characterized traditional samurai combat, they saw as inferior. This difference is noted in the Hoshiman Godokun. According to our manner of fighting, we must first call out by name someone from the enemy ranks, and then attack in single combat. But the Mongols took no notice at all of such conventions. They rushed forward all together in a mass, grappling with any individuals they could catch and killing them. The Mongol method of advances and withdrawals accompanied by bells, drums and war cries was also unknown in Japan, as was the technique of Mongolian archers, which involved shooting arrows en masse into the air rather than long-ranged one-on-one combat. The Zen Buddhism of Hojo Tokimune and his Zen master Baku had gained credibility beyond national boundaries, and the first mass followings of Zen teachings among samurai began to flourish. The failed invasions also mark the first use of the word kamikaze. The fact that the typhoon that helped Japan defeat the Mongol navy in the first invasion occurred in late November, well after the normal Pacific typhoon season, perpetuated the Japanese belief that they would never be defeated or successfully invaded, which remained an important aspect of Japanese foreign policy until the very end of World War II. The failed invasions also demonstrated a weakness of the Mongols, the inability to mount naval invasions successfully after the death of Kublai. His successor, Temujin Khan, unsuccessfully demanded the submission of Japan in 1295. The Mongols and the Ashikaga shogunate of Japan made peace in the late 14th century during the reign of Dauphin Temur, the last Yuan emperor in Khan Valley. Long before the peace agreement, there was stable trade in East Asia under the dominance of the Mongols in Japan. As a consequence of the destruction of the Mongol fleets, Japan's independence was guaranteed. Simultaneously, a power struggle within Japan led to the dominance of military governments and diminishing imperial power. Technological significance. The Mongol invasions are an early example of gunpowder warfare. One of the most notable technological innovations during the war was the use of explosive bombs. The bombs are known in Chinese as thunder crash bombs, and were fired from catapults, inflicting damage on enemy soldiers. An illustration of a bomb is depicted in a Japanese scroll, showing the use by the Mongols against mounted samurai. Archaeological evidence of the use of gunpowder was finally confirmed when multiple shells of the explosive bombs were discovered in an underwater shipwreck off the shore of Japan by the Kyushu Okinawa Society for Underwater Archaeology. X-rays by Japanese scientists of the excavated shells provided proof that they contained gunpowder. Gallery.